everyone, and thank you so much for coming back to my channel.
What's it like to be the one that he turns to when he's out of answers? What's it like?
So as you can see by today's video title, this isn't an exciting video. I don't want to make this super long. I just kind of wanted to share with you my story, where I've been, what's been happening. Excuse the train. It's currently about 11:45 at night. My husband is fast asleep upstairs in bed, like totally starfished over the bed. My kids are fast asleep as well, and I just couldn't sleep. My IBS has been playing up, so I thought I'd come make some peppermint tea. And I kind of just sat on my phone here in the living room, and I thought I'm going to quickly film this now because I wanted to get it out there and share it with you guys, let you know where it's been, what's been happening, where my lack of motivation's been, and yeah, just talk a little bit about mental health for a while, I suppose. So first of all, I'm sitting in my living room. I hate my blinds. I absolutely despise them. Look at them, they're totally wrinkled. This is obviously a rented house, so I can't like just take them down and not replace it. I just don't know if I was to get rid of them, do I have to put those ones back in when I leave or not? I don't know why I'm talking about this right now. So basically, if you don't know and you haven't been following my YouTube journey, I lost my wee granny back in December. I call her my wee granny because she was a wee tot, she was tiny. And wee in Scotland means small. So I lost my wee granny back in December. I was really close to her. She was very much a big part of my life, my kids' lives, my husband's life. And so losing her was really tough on me and my family. And especially with last year, we didn't see her much. So last year my mental health was it was hard. It wasn't bad. I had my good days and my bad days. But obviously after losing her, I really struggled. And we had her funeral just before Christmas, and then my mum decided to move in with us for a couple of weeks just so that we could support her a little bit, give her the company of the kids over Christmas and New Year, especially at a time that she would spend a lot of time with her mum. And I needed my mummy. I just needed my mum close by, and yeah, it's been tough and I'm not going to cry. So obviously that happened, and in January is generally a really busy month for us. We have so many birthdays in January. My son is at the start of January. I'm in January, so it was my 30th. Then it would have been my grand's 90th birthday on the 14th, so we also obviously went and celebrated that. That was tough because she didn't quite make her 90th, which we always hoped she would. And then it's my mother-in-law's birthday, and then it's also my daughter's birthday. So January is a really busy month for us, and I was just plodding on trying to keep going. And it was just before my daughter's birthday that I realised I was about 4 days late. Now, I'd actually been at the doctor's about a week and a half before I found out, just for some checks, and part of their routine checks was to take a pregnancy test, and it was negative, 100% negative. And so I wasn't expecting it to be a positive test, but I was 4 days late. I had no other symptoms. I didn't really have symptoms with my first two kids. I was a bit nauseous with my daughter, but bar that, my first trimesters were pretty okay. So it wasn't I wasn't like unwell that I had to check the test. I was only 4 days late, so I thought I'm going to take it. I had a test lying around, and yeah, it came back positive. And so a little bit shocked. And then I remember my husband had nipped out to get bread or something in the morning. We'd run out, and I took the test, and then he came back, and I just smiled at him, and he went, "You're pregnant, aren't you?" I was like, "Yeah, how do you know?" He's like, "I just knew by the smile on your face." So we hadn't purposely been trying, but we weren't obviously trying to avoid it at the same time. We are a happily married couple with two amazing kids. I would love another couple of kids. My husband's quite content with what we've got, so we have kind of decided that we'll definitely have one more. But it wasn't necessarily on the cards for right now. My sister's pregnant, well, she was pregnant at the time, and my best friend was pregnant at the time, so we're kind of just focusing on that. And like I said, my mental health hasn't been great, especially with the loss of my gran. I wasn't in the best place, but it's amazing, like the natural, as soon as I found out I was pregnant, I just felt like this big weight had been lifted off my shoulders. Like, I just love being a mum and having kids, having my babies and being a mum, and just that's my purpose in life, definitely, is being the best mum I can. And so it almost made me feel so much better and happier. But if I'm honest, from the start it didn't feel right. The test was super light, which I thought, okay, I could be early on, and I ended up taking a clear blue that night, I think it was. I made my husband go to Asda, and as you know, clear blue aren't cheap, so he went and got me one. I'd taken another couple of the cheap tests, and a clear blue, and it said 1 to 2 weeks. And so we were pretty early on, and all the tests were really quite light. I took pictures, but I've had to delete them all because I kept torturing myself. And so yeah, as you would expect, over the next few days your tests are going to get darker, and they did slightly. They weren't really dark, and that's kind of what was making me feel a little bit, questioning myself a little bit. But we didn't really go on to tell anyone. I am terrible with both my daughter and my son. As soon as I found out, I told my family. But because my sister was pregnant and my best friend was pregnant, I wasn't sure if I was going to just wait until they'd had their kids, obviously, to give them that time. I didn't want to take it away from them. I know that's stupid when I think about it, and they both said obviously that wasn't what they would have wanted, but I wonder if in some sense I knew something wasn't right. I didn't feel right. And so I'm terrible at taking tests. Like, as soon as I've got one positive, I took about another 5 or 6 tests after that, just the cheap ones. And they were all pretty much around the same sort of strength and line. They weren't very strong, but there was definitely a line there. So going by my clear blue, 1 to 2 weeks, but going by the first day of my last period, I was about 3 weeks, something like that. And so we decided we weren't going to tell anyone, but then my mum came to drop over my daughter's birthday present, and I needed to tell someone. I needed to tell my mum, and so I told her. And I told her that I wasn't feeling great, and she said obviously congratulations, and she was happy for us, but she's very much like me and my sister. We're quite superstitious, so we don't want to talk about things too early on in case things go wrong. And so we say our congratulations and we whatever, but you don't really want to talk about it too much until you've had your scan, you've had your first appointment, until you know things are okay. But it also, you can't help yourself from planning ahead. Now, going by the dates, I would have been due in October. So for us with 2 January babies, it was quite nice, the thought of having one not in January. And so it made us start to think, and it's hard not to think, and you're trying to not think about too much when you know until you've had your... Anyway, it is what it is. And so we were kind of just plodding on. I'd phoned and I'd booked in my tests I booked in my appointments with my midwife, and then she then booked in my first scan, so they were all booked in. And yeah, I wasn't feeling anything at all. I had no symptoms, which again, with my daughter and my son, I felt a little bit nauseous with my daughter, but I didn't really have symptoms with them, so it wasn't a big like red cross to me that I wasn't feeling unwell. I just didn't feel pregnant, and I know that's silly because you're only like 5 or 6 weeks, but I didn't feel pregnant. It's one of those things, I suppose, you always hear people say, oh, I just didn't feel right. And it's hard to know what they're meaning by that, but you just know. And this is what I was feeling. And so it got to about 5.5 weeks. When I'm saying weeks here, I'm going off the first day of my last period, because obviously we didn't have a definitive weeks until the scan and things like that. So from about first day of my last period, it was about 5.5 weeks. And I said to my husband, I want to take another test, but I need to go and buy another clear blue. So I went and bought some cheap ones, and I went and bought a clear blue. And so obviously at this point you would expect, because the first clear blue said 1 to 2 weeks, I would expect to be 3+ at this point. Maybe I was about 6 weeks then. It's all a bit of a blur now. And so I took one of the cheap tests, and I took a clear blue. And the cheap test, I remember taking it, and you're meant to put it on the side, you're meant to wait your 3 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever. I couldn't help but just look at it, like I was pulling up my trousers, and I couldn't help but look at it. And I expected to see this dark line pretty quickly, and there was nothing there but the control line, so the test line wasn't there. And so I remember thinking that was a bit weird, but maybe I really do have to wait 3 minutes. And so when it was up on the 3 minutes on that test, I looked, and the line was super faint. Like, it was, I want to say it was almost lighter than the first test I took. So at this point my heart just dropped, and I thought, I knew something wasn't right. And I looked at the clear blue test that I took, and it still said 1 to 2 weeks. Now at this point I definitely should have been 3+, going by the first test that I took. And the fact that it said 1 to 2 weeks, like, I remember I just started crying, and I went and spoke to my husband, and he's like, don't panic. So we did some research online, and a lot of people said, like, don't go by the clear blues. It said that I was only 1 week when I was at least 7 weeks, and then I had a healthy baby. And so I tried to not worry about it, because I'd actually spoken to my doctor to let him know I was pregnant and the other things I was dealing with, and he said that they wouldn't do anything unless you start bleeding. And obviously I wasn't bleeding at this point, so I had to just wait, I suppose. There was nothing I could do. I forgot to mention as well that basically from the start I did have a lot of stomach cramping. Now I know that is quite common in pregnancy. I don't remember having a lot of it with my other two, but it was just like I sometimes get that cramping either obviously before a period, but also I get it when I have a bad IBS flare up. So I wasn't sure if that was what was happening. It just was just hurting and I just didn't like that, but there was nothing I could do. And so yeah, we took tests and I just said I wanted to take another, so I took another cheap test the next morning, which my husband was like, Stacy, you know, stop taking them, there's nothing you can do, you have to just wait and see what happens. And that line was just as faint, and I thought for that being first thing in the morning, it just wasn't right. So there was nothing I could do. Like I said, I would wait on my appointment, my letters had come in, like I spoke to the doctor and he said there was nothing you could do unless things obviously start bleeding or whatever, and this, that and the next thing. And I think it was only a couple of days later, I'm trying to think what day that would have been. That might have been a Monday or a Tuesday. And it was the Friday. Was it the Thursday? Thursday, I think. I remember going to the toilet and wiping and there being something there. Not a lot, but there was something there. And my heart just like literally went down the toilet. But I also again read that it's common to have some signs of implantation bleeding, which I didn't believe it should be at that stage, but I know that these things can happen. And sorry, this is really bitty. I'm just trying to remember what happened. So that was the Thursday, and I remember waking up the Friday with a little bit of stomach cramping, and then I went to the toilet and there was blood. Not a lot, but there was definitely red blood this time, whereas before it wasn't quite red, this was red blood. And I just started crying and I shouted at my husband and he said, okay, I think we all know what this is probably happening, but we need to come to the hospital to explain my symptoms. And as the day went on, there was a lot more bleeding. My cramping was really bad. I wasn't feeling very good. And it was basically said to me on the phone at that point that it sounded like I was having a miscarriage. And I remember hearing those words and breaking down on the sofa. And my daughter coming in and seeing me crying and just cuddling me. And she didn't really know what was going on. I hadn't really told her much. I just said that I had a really sore tummy. Mummy wasn't feeling very well. But she just knew something wasn't right. And my husband cuddling me. And there was just nothing that anyone could do. They basically just said it is a matter of it nature taking its course. But to be in touch with them. And they were really, really good on the phone. So I got my hot water bottle and I lay in bed. I remember I watched this random movie on Netflix. My sister was like, watch like an upbeat chick flick or watch an upbeat comedy. And I just put this random movie on. I actually quite enjoyed it, but it distracted me for that 90 minutes that it was on. And the bleeding got heavier and my stomach cramping got worse. And so it was the Saturday. Phoned back up to the hospital again to let them know, check in. And it sounded at this point that my miscarriage hadn't fully started. I was a case of it just basically happening. Because I said to her, like, I wasn't bleeding as much as I expected. I know you see on the movies and in TV shows when someone has a miscarriage, it's just blood everywhere, and it wasn't. It was like quite a light period. I think that's what was confusing me, because I was expecting this big gush of blood. I know it's hard to know what to expect, but that's what I was expecting. And it didn't happen, but my stomach was really sore. I remember I had a lot of pain, like right in the top of my stomach. Like it was like you'd done a workout and there was just a lot of pain up there, and in the lower belly like a really bad period cramp. And so basically I spent a couple of days in bed crying, laughing at stupid TV shows, crying again, my daughter coming up and giving me chocolate and cuddles and crying again. This was actually the Saturday before Valentine's Day, so the Sunday was Valentine's Day. And so I woke up on the Sunday morning. I still wasn't 100% happy with the fact that I wasn't bleeding that much, but I knew it was a miscarriage. Obviously I knew it was, but I wasn't happy with my level of bleeding. I expected more to come away, and I was expecting, do you know what? I don't know what I was expecting. I think I was just going by what you see on the TV and what you see on shows. And I was kind of I was confused and I was upset and I was emotional. And so when I phoned them back on the Sunday, because they asked me just to keep phoning and checking and letting them know how I am, which was amazing, they basically booked me in for a scan on the Monday because they want me to check that everything was coming away naturally. And she obviously said that definitely it's a miscarriage, you're having all the symptoms, all the signs, how you're feeling, blah, blah, blah. And so it was basically just a case of lying on the sofa on the Sunday and waiting for Monday. So that was a great Valentine's Day. And so on the Monday, we dropped my kids off at my mum's and my husband took me into hospital. He was allowed to come with me. Obviously, there's a lot of regulations with hospitals and maternity wards and everything just now, but he was allowed to be there. But what was really hard was where we had to park and where we had to go into the hospitals where you bring your newborn baby out of. So I was seeing like loads of guys, husbands holding their newborns in their car seats, and all the women like walking around, and so that was quite tough. I know obviously that is just where it was going to be, but it was kind of tough at the time when you're feeling the most vulnerable. And I remember going up to the front door and they had it to sort of like almost stop, like a big sign. They say, "Why are you here?" And yeah, they're for triage or whatever. And I said, "I'm actually here to be checked for suspected miscarriage." And so they took us straight in, no waiting in this main room, into like this quiet, calming music, dim lighted room. And it was actually lovely because you were away from like, not the hustle and bustle, but you're away from like everybody else, and you were kind of put in this room. And my bladder was bursting because you had to go for a full bladder, and we had to wait for about 25 minutes, and then the midwife came and got us, and the sonographer did what she had to do, and then she had to do the internal ultrasound as well as the external, like the stummy one, and then she had to put inside me, and basically said to me that there was nothing there. So the sonographer obviously checked everything, and she said that there was nothing inside, and so it sounds definitely like a miscarriage. But they also had to go and get me to have some bloods in case it was an ectopic pregnancy and it just wasn't where it should be, just to make sure I obviously didn't have anything in there that wasn't in the right place or where it should be. And so I remember her going out, and obviously, you know, when it's so hard when you're trying to be strong and someone is sympathetic towards you, and it makes you even more emotional. So I remember her saying, "I'm so sorry," and going out and giving us a minute, and I just broke down with my husband. And then another midwife came in and took my bloods, and then basically spoke me through about things, gave me a card, and said that they would call me with the blood results and let me know what was said. And we were sent on our way basically. And so she called me a couple hours later. We were home at this point. She called me a couple hours later and said that my HGC levels were at 7, and if they were at 5, that is classed as not pregnant. So I was basically not pregnant anymore, and that I was just to take a test in 2 weeks, check that nothing else was there, and that would be it. And again, she got a phone and she said, "I'm really sorry, like I'm so sorry for your loss, and if you need any help or support, make sure you call us back." And I remember hanging up that phone and just crying. I cried a lot. And that is the story of my miscarriage. Going by the first day of my last period, I would have been about 7 weeks. But obviously it was hard to tell where I was. I could have miscarried pretty early on. I could have not been right from the start. I didn't feel right from the start. So it's so hard to know. You just kind of wish you had all these questions answered, but it is what it is, isn't it? Obviously wasn't meant to be just now. My hormones have been hellish since. Still trying to get them sorted, and just trying to get on with things and just be positive and realise that maybe it wasn't meant to be just now, that it will hopefully happen again in the future. But it's going to be hard again, I think, having another pregnancy and not having that worry. To like see your family and your friends and just give them cuddles, that was tough as well. I had my husband, I had my kids, but yeah, telling everyone over the phone, and I didn't want to worry my sister too much because she was about to pop and have a baby, and it was, yeah, it's been tough. So I just wanted to let you guys know, I said I was going to make this long video, but it's quite long. I just wanted to let you know where I've been, why my scheduling, uploading has not been great. Like, I'm trying to get back to my 2 videos a week. Sometimes I'm once a week, and I might miss a week occasionally, but I promise I will get back to that. I'm just struggling some days finding the motivation to film. And I want to start doing some bulk filming so that I've got a couple of videos sort of in lieu, so that I can have something for you guys at all times. But some days are better than others. I'm okay, I'm fine now. I'm talking about it, it's quite emotional, but I've got my amazing kids and my amazing husband and my amazing family to keep me going. Obviously wasn't meant to be just now. We will try, so you guys will have to stick around and see our future story here. And I will get back to my better scheduling, hopefully coming out of lockdown soon here in Scotland, which will be amazing. And then hopefully I'll be able to travel down to England and see my niece, my new amazing niece, who is beautiful. I can't believe I've not given her a hug yet, and she's born, she's here, and I've not been able to see her because my sister's in London. So anyway, I really hope that you enjoy this video. I hope that you find it somewhat informative and give you a little bit insight of where I've been and what's been happening and why I'm maybe not quite myself. And I also just want to share my story because I did find it quite comforting in a sense, looking at other people's stories and watching and hearing other people's stories, knowing that I wasn't alone. I wasn't aware of how common a miscarriage was, so it was a definite eye-opener. And yeah, it's been tough, but it is probably about 12:30 now. I should go to sleep. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.